All right, this is lesson 1.4, and we're going to be talking about angle relationships and properties. So this little diagram here is a really good visual for the angle relationships that are made by the types of angles that we talked about here in 1.2. So straight, acute, obtuse, and right angles. When you pair multiple of these together, then they form a relationship with the other angle, and then we can talk about that. So let's just go ahead and get started. Probably one of the easiest ones to start with are vertical angles. Now vertical, see kind of how it has like a little V right here? That's a good thing to kind of keep in mind. Vertical angles, they are two lines. So we need one line with arrows. We need another line with arrows. So just like this, okay? And then you can kind of see like this is a V right here. This is a V right there. You know, V here and V here. So it looks like several V's, and they have their points all touching each other. And that's kind of why I pointed it out right there, okay? So there's my point of intersection. All right, so vertical angles are across from each other on intersecting lines. So here's what that means. This angle right here and this angle right there, they are across from each other. Okay, and these two angles, so this little symbol, I drew the arc so I could identify the two angles that I'm talking about. And then I put this little tick mark in there, and that means that they are congruent. And congruent, for lack of a better word, it means equal. Okay, they're basically carbon copies of each other. All right, so let's label this as angle 1. We're going to label this as angle 2. So what we can say is that angle 1, and there's a symbol for congruent. So congruent is an equal sign that has a wave on top. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. All right, so this symbol right here, right? So that means the word congruent. So typically when I'm working on geometry, I don't ever write this word. I use that symbol. And that's why symbols are important, is it actually helps you to be more efficient. Okay, so then that leaves these two angles here. So we have this bigger angle, this bigger angle. I'm going to put two little tick marks here and two little tick marks here. These two angles are across from each other. Okay, angle 3, angle 4. Probably would have been better to go in numerical order, but that's okay. So now I can say that angle 3 and 4 are congruent. Just like this. And marking up your diagram and then writing the correct symbols. This right here is like writing a huge paragraph in your English class or your history class, right? So you kind of have all of the info with very little effort. Okay, let's go on to something called a linear pair. Now, the word line, okay, is in there. And then we have pair. Well, a pair means two, correct? So basically what we have is we have two angles. They are adjacent, which means next to. So let's write that down, next to. Adjacent means next to. And supplementary. Supplementary means that they add to 180 degrees. They're not 180 each. They add. They combine to get 180. And they're going to form a straight line. Okay, all lines are straight, and if they're not, they're called curves. So let's draw a line right here, as straight as you can. You can use the little pencil trick that I showed you. Okay, and then you can just pick a point doesn't matter where. And then you can draw a ray coming up diagonal like that. Okay, so just like this. And then we're going to put a 1 right here. Okay, so this is one angle, a little tick mark. And then I'll have this other line over here. And I'm going to put 2 little tick marks, and this will be angle number 2. So what you're looking at is you're looking at one angle and another angle. They're next to each other, side by side. They add to give you a measure of 180 degrees, and they form that straight line. Okay, so here's the straight line part, like that's what they're forming, right? They're going to form that straight line right there, but they're going to add to 180. That means if I go from this side here all the way over to this side here, okay, that's going to be 180 degrees. That's what that means. All right, so here's what we would write down. You could write down that the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180 degrees. They're not equal to each other, but they do add up to give me 180 degrees. All right, so let's move on. Let's talk about some of these words in here. Adjacent. Adjacent means next to, right? Side by side. 2 angles that are next to each other and they share a common endpoint. Okay, see how angle 1 and angle 2 over here, they share that endpoint. So let's draw a different type of angle. So we'll have that one, draw my endpoint, place my pen, and let's say like that. Okay, so I have something like this, and then I can put my other one in the middle. So again, that's the pencil trick if you don't have a ruler. Okay, so this is my angle. All right, common side is this one. Okay, so the common side means they share that arm. This arm right here, they share it. So over here, this is angle 1. All right, and then this one is angle 2. Now these angles may or may not be equal, okay? So they may or may not be congruent, but the big thing is that they are next to each other, okay? And they share a common side. So they can be congruent, but they are not always congruent. Remember, congruent means equal. Okay, so that's adjacent. That was this word here. Let's talk about this word complementary or supplementary. So that we're going to go down here now. Supplementary angles, okay. Any two angles, and they don't have to be side by side. Any two whose sum is 180. Okay, so here's a couple of examples. Let's say you have this line right here, and you have that. All right, so that's one picture. Let's draw an angle here. Okay, so we have this one, and then kind of make another one that's a little slanted this way. So this one is thin and this one is thicker. All right, so okay, you can also have maybe one looks like this where it's straight up and down and you've got that right angle there. Okay. And so this is a straight line. Okay. Supplementary angles, if you were to place them side by side, they would form a straight line. So can form a straight line. They're not always attached. Okay, sometimes they are. So they're not always adjacent. Remember, adjacent means right next to, they're touching each other. So they're not always adjacent. Okay, so we have this here. And these are some examples. So you have angle 1 and you have angle 2, and they add to 180. This angle 1 and this angle 2 will add to 180. This angle 1 and this angle 2 will add to 180. Okay. And then finally, we have the word complementary. Now, complementary, you can think of corner. Okay, C starts with corner. Complementary starts with corner. If you were to measure the corner of a room, in theory, a corner is 90 degrees if the construction was done correctly. Supplementary starts with S, and we can form a straight line. Okay, so complementary and corner, supplementary, straight line. Now, it's any two angles whose sum is 90. Okay, so a couple of the easiest ones. Straight up and down, straight out to the side, little box right there, but you'll have a common side right there, and it doesn't always go through the corner of the box. Okay, so like for instance, this, okay, angle 1, and then this one over here, angle 2, they're not always congruent. Don't assume that we just cut it in half. So we would say that angle 1 plus angle 2 equals 90 degrees. Okay. Over here, angle 1 plus angle 2 equals 180 degrees. See the difference? This makes a straight line. This does not. Now, complementary angles do not have to be adjacent. So see how these are broken apart? We can actually have that over here. So let's say you had something like this, and then you had something like that. Okay, so let's say that this is angle 2 and this is angle 1. You can still say that angle 1 and angle 2 add to 90. So their measurements would add to 90. Okay, so it is really important that you learn these angle relationships. I would not throw this, just like your vocab in unit 1.1. I would never get rid of this piece of paper right here. Okay, this is a really good reference. So let's use this, just set it off to the side. We're going to use that to go talk about identifying our angles. Okay, so here we go. We're going to check any and all relationships between angle 1 and angle 2. All right, so when I look here, and again, we're looking at this paper here to see what we can match, okay? So I see these two V's kind of touch each other, so I know that they're vertical. They are not side by side, okay? So I can't have adjacent. And then complementary, that means that they add to 90, but I don't know any measurements, so I cannot definitively say that. Supplementary means they add to 180. I don't know that, so I can't use that. And because they're not supplementary, they're not a linear pair. Okay? So supplementary, linear pair is a type of supplementary. Okay? It's a type of supplementary. All right, so the only one I can definitively say is vertical. That's it. Can't do anything else. Okay, so this little box is 90 degrees. Okay, and then see this straight line right here? That means the other side, there's a box for 90 degrees. And so angle 1 plus angle 2, angle 1 plus angle 2, they have to equal 90 degrees, according to this picture. If this side is 90, this side has to be 90 because that is a straight line. And all straight lines like this are 180 degrees. So this has to be 90. Okay, well, first of all, angle 1 and angle 2, they're side by side. So they're adjacent. They're not like this. They're definitely not vertical. If they are adjacent, they're not vertical. If they're vertical, they are not adjacent. This is an or situation, okay? Complementary and supplementary, it's or. Can't be both. Complementary means 90 degrees. Well, I can see that that's going to happen. So they're not going to be supplementary and they're not going to be a linear pair, okay? If they're supplementary, they're also a linear pair. Well, take that back. If they're supplementary, they might be a linear pair. Okay, this is a type of supplementary. Okay. All right, let's go on to number 3. I see 1 and 2. I see that they're next to each other, so they cannot be vertical. But I don't know if they're 90 degrees, doesn't look like it. But hey, look, they're next to each other and they form a straight line. So they're a linear pair. And because they're a linear pair, they are also supplementary. Okay. Over here, I can see that they're next to each other, so they cannot be vertical. But I don't know anything else. I don't know any measurements. I don't know any boxes. They don't make a straight line. So they can't be any of these. Okay. And then here we go. We have angle 1 and we have angle 2. All right. So angle 1 and angle 2. Well, there's a couple things going on here. You see all of this right here? So all of that and all of that are the same. Okay. And then angle 1 and angle 2, those would be the same. You know, this little pi wedge right here. Okay. See all that? And then if that's 90, then that's automatically 90 there because, so angle 1 and angle 2, they're not adjacent, but they are vertical. Remember, adjacent and vertical, it's an either or situation. 1 and 2, let's kind of think about this. If this is if there's a line here and a line here, then that means that those two are the same size. Well, if that's 90, then all of this is 90. So this has to be 45 and this has to be 45. Well, if both of those are 45, okay, then this is also 45 and this is also 45. So angle 1 and angle 2, not only are they congruent because they're vertical, they're also complementary. They equal 90 degrees. Okay? They don't add to 180 and they're not a linear pair. Over here, we have angle 1 and angle 2. Now, if this is 90 degrees, Well, this is automatically 90 because that's a straight line. And if that's 90, this is 90 because that's a straight line, and 1 and 2 are across from each other, so they're vertical. So they're not side by side, but they are vertical. They don't add to 90, they add to 180 because 90 and 90 is 180. But they're not linear. They don't make a straight line. Okay, they're just supplementary. So there's that. So real quick, vertical angles, okay, these are not adjacent. Okay, so when you're classifying adjacent or vertical, this is an either or situation, okay, like we just saw. Complementary or supplementary, okay, can't be both. It's either this one or this one. And then I want you to write this down. This is a type of supplementary. Okay. So this is a subcategory of that. By the way, what I just demonstrated is when you're working through your stuff, if you notice connections, go back to your notes and add those connections to your notes. That's a really good way to process the information. Okay, so then we're going to go here. Let's see. All right, so down here, okay, right here, let's go ahead and label what we see happening. Okay, it says find the measure of each angle. Now this is where we're going to use the properties to determine the measurements. So here's angle 1. Angle 1 is across from angle 3. So I know that these are the same amount. Angle 2 is across from angle 4. So I know that they're the same amount. It says find the measure of angle 1, 2, and 3 if the measure of angle 4 is 110. So right here I'm going to write 110 degrees. Well, if 2 and 4 are equal, I'm going to put 110 over here. And then, let's think about that for a minute. Okay, 2 and 3, those are next to each other and they form a straight line. So these have to add to 180 degrees, correct? Well, 180, if you subtract 110, then you're going to end up getting 70 degrees here. And if this is 70 degrees, so is this one. Okay, so I haven't even answered anything over here. All I did, I needed one number only, and I was able to figure out everything I need to know about this diagram. So over here, I literally can just transfer my answers. 70 degrees, 110 degrees, and 70 degrees. So label everything first. Okay, and in geometry, you are going to be required to label, and label some more. Okay, so that's really, really, really important. Okay, now let's go to this last little piece here. I'm going to kind of do the same thing. First things first, we're going to use our angle properties to find other angles. All right, and we have to state the type of angle relationship. So they're vertical angles, complementary, supplementary, adjacent, and or linear pair. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at what we have. Well, in this diagram here, I can see that this box, so this box means that all of this is 90 degrees. Okay, so there's that. I know that part of the 90 degrees is 29, and I know that angle B is next to it. So, a couple of things. These are complementary. And they're adjacent. Okay, so they add to 90 degrees and they're next to each other. So there's that. Now let's talk about the math behind it. So to get the measure of angle B, that's pretty easy. I just take my 90 degrees that I know is going to be true, and I'm going to subtract 29 degrees. And I know that that is going to leave me with 61 degrees. So the measure of angle B is 61 degrees. Okay, and you can go like that too. All right, right here we have this angle, and then we have B. Well, to go from here to here, that's going to form a straight line. So that's going to equal 180 degrees. So first of all, these are adjacent angles. They are supplementary because they add to 180. And then the fact that they make a straight line, that means they're a linear pair. Okay, so they're all three things. A linear pair is next to each other, and then they're supplementary, which means they add to 180. So in order to get B, I know that the measure of angle B is 180 degrees minus 35 degrees. And so the measure of angle B is 145 degrees. Okay. Probably we don't really want to be doing this, to be honest. We really want to maintain our algebra skills. So I would rather you write it like that. This can sometimes confuse people, especially if you're kind of all over the place. So just do it like this, like you normally would in an algebra equation. All right, and our very last one. So we have right here angle 43 and angle B, and you can see where you've got this V shape here and this V shape here. Okay, so these are vertical. Now vertical, they're not next to each other. They don't add to 90. They don't add to 180. They are congruent. Okay, congruent means that they are equal. But okay, they're different items that are equivalent. So we're going to have that little wave on the top of the sign. Okay, so because they're vertical, that's real easy. Measure of angle B is 43 degrees. There we go. All right, well, that is the end of 1.4, and I will see you again in the next lesson.